Hey everybody, so today I'm going to show you how I made this watercolor card that I did today for the Pretty Pink Posh watercolor blog hop. Sometimes I get a lot of questions about watercolor. Watercolor is very popular right now. It's an easy technique if you're not familiar with it. Never be afraid to try something new. It's very easy. And this is a technique where we're going to actually heat emboss the images first, which actually creates a little barrier inside where your water doesn't seem to go all over the place, so it's a little less intimidating of a way to try to start out doing watercolor. So this is what we're going to make, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you're going to need is a piece of watercolor paper. I like to use Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, cold press, and I have a piece trimmed to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, or you can go ahead and trim it to whatever size your project's going to be. I use a piece of scrap paper because embossing is kind of messy. So first thing I'm going to use, just use an anti-static powder. And I'm working on the textured side of the cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and put that all over. Helps reduce getting unwanted embossing powder all over your cardstock. And I'm using the stamp set from the Alleyway Stamps called Tickle Me Happy. This is a great set with some very cute feathers in it. So, let's go ahead and get started. You're going to need a VersaMark ink pad, which is one of these. Just a clear ink pad that makes a watermark. It's great for embossing. You're going to need embossing powder. I'm using white, or you could use clear. And then, we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm a bit out of practice on my video making, so bear with me here. I'm using this feather. Go ahead and put it on my block. My feather's a little well loved, as you'll see here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is stamp. I start out with putting one feather about midway, kind of work from the middle out. That's how I did it. And then it's going to be kind of hard to see, but you can see my stamp pad's kind of dirty, so I can kind of see a little bit where I am. But you can stamp and then go over it with the embossing powder and heat each feather individually if you'd like. But I'm just going to kind of work with each feather as I can here. I'm just randomly placing the feathers. No specific order or anything. So I have about half the card done, so I'm going to go ahead and put some embossing powder on that and heat set that, just so I can kind of see and things don't dry before I get in there. So I have some Hero Arts White Embossing Powder, and I just keep it in a container. I kind of scoop it up like that, tap it off right into the container, and you can also just use a spoon if you've got one laying around, or scrap paper, whatever you've got. There's totally many different ways to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set that. First thing you want to do is let your heat gun heat up for a little bit. Helps melt the powder a little better. So once it's all dried and cool, you can kind of see where those are. I'm actually using a combination of Peerless Watercolors. These are watercolors that come on little strips of paper, and you can cut them to stack them, or you can keep them in the 2x2 squares they come in. But I put all mine in a little book so I could see. So I have no idea what number. I'm using this brown here that came in the pack of 40. And then I'm also using these watercolors here, and I'm using the brown, number 47. I'm not even going to try to attempt to say the name of these watercolors. But anyway, these are the two different kinds of watercolors I'm using. My dark brown is the number 47 from this set. And the lighter set is going to be this brown. And I'll put the information in the little link below. So Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with the watercoloring. You're going to need some water, a paintbrush, and a paper towel to have on hand, just in case. Okay, so the best way to do this, is you're going to want to make sure I use my paper towel a lot. So go ahead and wet your brush, and then put it in the paper towel, dab it on the paper towel, and then you're going to flood. You're not flooding, it's just a damp paintbrush, and you're putting water inside the feather, inside the embossing area, and I actually work in sections, so I wet inside each section first. Go back in here, back to my paper towel, and then I'm going to go into my brown color. And I actually put down a whole coat of the dark brown, the number 47. I actually put that down. It's a little dark, so what you can do, a trick you can do is take a piece of plastic and put some water on it. Grab your paint from the So you're going to take a piece of plastic, put some water on it, grab the paint from the palette, put it down onto the plastic, and you're kind of like making your own little palette, and then you could add more water to it to tone down the color if you want. It's like I want a lighter shade of the brown for this, so that's what we do there. Okay, so then you're going to take your paintbrush. Now my water's going to dry a little bit. And these watercolors are so smooth that they blend very easily. If you get any color outside the line, just go in with some wet water, paper towel, and dab it up. Pretty easy. Then you're just going to go in and add some more water to the area. Slightly damp paintbrush, drop in the water, and move it around. And you just keep repeating that in each section. And the embossed lines, because they're raised, they kind of create like a barrier for you. If you stay in the lines, unlike what I'm doing. I'm only going out of the lines because I'm trying to show you. Then when you drop it in, you can see it spreads on its own. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video and play a little music so you can just watch me. You don't want to sit here and listen to me talk and watch us in real time. We'll be here till Christmas, so just go ahead. I'm just doing the same thing. Slightly damp paintbrush, putting clear water in the section I'm going to work with. Tap it on the water, grab a little bit of that paint, and just lightly put it in there. I want a very light coating to start with. Alright, so just go ahead and I'll be right back after we're done with this part. Okay, so once you have the first layer down, if you see any places where you, like there's a spot where I went out of the line, I'm just going to lighten that up and then just pick it up. Okay, so on my original card you can see the inside line of the feathers, the vein is, or that stem vein, whatever you want to call it, it's very dark. So how I did that was, we're going to take the paint directly from the paint here. And so what I'm doing with my paintbrush, once again, is I'm dampening it pretty damp. And then I'm taking full color from the paint. I'm dropping it in at the base. I don't know if you can see that. I'm dropping full color, concentrated color, right in at the base. So it's very, very dark. And then I'm just moving it up. And if it gets too dry, just add a little bit more water. Then go right directly back into the paint. And then as you pull it up, it'll dry a little bit. Not dry, it'll lighten up a little bit as you pull it up. So just repeat that again, right to the, directly to the paint. You can use a tinier paintbrush if you'd like for this. I don't mind working with a larger paintbrush. This is where I went in with the Peerless Watercolors, and I wanted a little bit of a more brown shade that I couldn't get from the other palette. Although you could mix your own. I just really liked this one that was on the Peerless one. So here, same thing, you're going to go over the spot again with the water. Damp paintbrush, you're going to go right into your color, and you're just going to, now what I did is I dropped it into the corners. So I drop it into a corner there, and then I drop it in up here. Now you can see it's much darker than what I want it to be. So then I take my paintbrush, I rinse it out onto my paper towel until it's very, very dry. And then I'm taking the dry paintbrush in, and I'm moving that color around. I work from in the empty spot into the color. Like that. And you can see how you get a gradient of it. Same thing up here. You're going to go back in and slightly dampen it. Drop your color in at the base where you want it. Rinse paintbrush. Take it to the paper towel and come in from the lighter area into the dark and kind of pull it out. And that was just by using a very damp paintbrush, your color, and just putting it in the corners and then just moving it around. And you get a great different, variation. Every feather looks different. And for the little dots on the feathers, again, I took the damp paintbrush, put a little bit of water in each circle. Took a little bit of the color, solid color, and I dropped it in. So I have the Stampin' Up heat tool, so I'm just going to set it on the lowest. I'm going to set it on 1 and just kind of lightly. 7 on the 1 is good for drying projects. It won't really melt your embossing powder. And then for the background, I actually used the Soft Sky color from Stampin' Up. I used an ink pad to... I did the smooshy technique onto the lid. I used my water with the ink that way to get the Soft Sky color, because I was doing this for a color challenge and that was the color that was in the challenge. So today I think what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and use blue. And I think we're going to use the blue that's in this set here. So we're going to use this. It's number 61. It's a very pretty soft, like a cornflower blue. I think we're going to go ahead and use that. Change it up a little. So what I like to do with backgrounds is I like to work in sections still. So I put a little bit more color, so I'm just tapping my brush onto the paper, and then I'm going into... You want to be careful because we colored feathers in first. You could always do the background first, but that's just how I am. I work backwards. I do a lot of stuff, but I still work in small sections because I want it to be watercolored, but I want it to look splotchy because I don't want it to be a solid watercolor. Back in there, I'm going to go ahead and wet my paint a little bit. Pick up a little bit of that. I'm going to drop it down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to blot it down around where I wetted. And I'm going to come back in with a wet paintbrush, and then I'm going to flood that. My paintbrush is a little bit wetter. It's not damp, it's actually wet. And I'm going to move that color around in between my feathers, leaving some white space. So we're going to go ahead and set this aside for now. And then we're going to take a piece of, I'm using chocolate chip cardstock. And I'm going to go ahead and put some anti-static powder on it. And I'm going to actually use the Just For You sentiment instead of the other one we used, the Thanks. I'm going to use the Just For You. Same thing, I'm just going to stamp with the VersaMark ink. I'm going to stamp down here. It is so static. There's so much static here that, oh, embossing is so hard. Okay, then I'm just going to go ahead and heat set that with the heat tool. Okay, then I'm going to use a piece of chocolate chip cardstock, and I'm going to make a top folding card. Crease it with my bone folder. Okay. I'm going to take my watercolor panel, that's mostly dry now, and I'm going to cut 1/4 inch off so that it's 4 across and not 4 1/4. You can see it's pretty flat. It's not too warpy. It's not all the way dry yet either, but we're going to go ahead and tape it down anyway. So using some adhesive, actually a lot of adhesive. I like to make sure all the ends are covered. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flush it to the one side and leave 1/4 inch sticking off. So, okay, then we're going to take our little flag that we made here, and I'm just going to put some more adhesive on it. Pretty easy. This is general neutral, so it can go either way. It's nice and flat for mailing, and it's a nice card, and I really like how the background came out, where it looks like a cloud. So anyway, stop by my blog if you want to see more pictures. And this is the other card that I made. And thanks for stopping by today. And I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.